Reed Summers examines the presence, motives, and intent behind the UFO phenomenon. He also directs strategy at the Human Institute, a non-partisan think tank focused on the scientific and policy changes of UAP and NHI.
My father was a highly gifted telepathic communicator and was basically contacted by non-human intelligence back in the mid 90s and received what he feels are a series of communiques. We are in some form of longitudinal engagement with non-human intelligences that do not necessarily share our collective human values, our collective human intent, as we might describe it. And we have to negotiate those intents. A whole new conversation is beginning, one that is credible, empirical, data driven, and will involve ultimately the best minds and the leading institutions of humanity. So, Emergent is basically walking around that tremendous historic global event of the human-NHI interface, and really kind of residing out on the front lines of the phenomenon, out where there is insufficient data, out where there are indicators but not necessarily evidence, and responsibly speculating on those front lines, asking the right questions that could ultimately lead to more targeted research and field investigation into the phenomenon. And in the Human Institute, we are tackling the institutional and policy ramifications of an NHI presence and what it looks like for to frame out the international preparedness and response plan for if and when NHI is affirmed to exist at a federal level or at the level of a governing body. I encourage you to have him on, Marshall Summers. And basically, where it begins is in the late 70s. Marshall was kind of cultivating an intuitive sense of how to communicate beyond words, how to connect, you could say, relationally. As he opened his aperture, other communications began to flow through him from what he would describe as a non human intelligence of a non physical form, a physical NHI, a physical set of observing entities who were, in their words, highly alarmed at the nature of contact taking place and how ill prepared humanity was for it. My concern is that in some NHI initiated encounters, those very basic kind of rules of life, what every sentient life form should be accorded, free will, sovereignty, are being directly violated and disregarded. We have a project at hand to prepare ourselves as a species to negotiate intents, to manage a non human presence in the human interest, and ultimately to set up our own framework for some kind of exopolitical diplomatic engagement, whether now or in the future, that may need to be built. There are other entities present. There are forceful communications being impelled upon the mind. And if one does not protect themselves, engage in some kind of psychic or mental shielding activity, which my father and I have developed to a very significant degree, you might find that those thoughts that are not your own enter your own mind and you become voicing. And that is in recent years, very recent, and with real health effects, real confirmed health effects. And it hasn't happened often, but it's happened enough to tell us that somebody is targeting U.S. citizens with non-contact weaponry, probably given or facilitated by the defense industry, to suppress conversations about the disclosure of the phenomenon and the government's historic involvement in it and collaboration with it. There is a covert set of activities by non-human entities taking place. The government knows. They classified it early under the highest levels of the secrecy apparatus, right out of the Department of Energy and the nuclear secrets infrastructure. I know I'm not the only one. I'm in touch with others who have as well. I've been shown ring camera footage of federal marshals showing up at the homes of documentary filmmakers on this phenomenon in fatigues, basically intimidating them verbally on the spot, but without any badge, without any marking as to what agency they come from. I chafe at the NHI acronym at times because it is too much of a catch-all. It's an inflated category that can include almost anything. I think there are strong indications we're dealing with a form of structured technology that is operating in this dimension, that is moving at speeds and with with capabilities to accelerate that suggest provisionally an interstellar explanation of origin, that they're not from here. And these entities, well, the biological component is corroborated by the firsthand experiencer accounts of those who have had physical NHI initiated encounters in the form of abductions, right? So the universe gave rise to Earth, Earth gave rise to us. The universe can give rise to other planetary bodies, which can give rise to other life. I think that is a defensible line for them, because when the global community figures out we're being visited literally by aliens, by physical, evolved alien entities, that is a unifier. That does break down the national security states and their longstanding, hostile positions against each other. Now, I think there are other physical phenomena at play that we might mischaracterize as ETI. So, there are atmospheric effects, right? There are misidentification of birds, et cetera. There are, atmospheric events that are physical, but are not necessarily intelligent. There is a smoke and mirrors campaign. And when you look at experiencer accounts and some of the narratives that they are allegedly told and the physical, psychological effects upon them in these encounters, you start to wonder, is someone trying to socially engineer human society to perceive NHI a certain way and also to perceive ourselves a certain way and to rewrite in a revisionist sense human history to weave NHI into that history.
I've always thought the idea. So, say tomorrow Trump rolls out a saucer in front of the White House, which he is currently
Right.
demolishing part of. I've just seen online. He rolls out a saucer and says, "Here's some greys that we've known about now for several decades. We're working alongside them."
We are a fractured and divided and distracted species, and we are consumed in basically, the escapades born out of history. During the 20th century, we flashed the universe with nuclear detonations, global conflict, environmental destruction. It's a clear techno bio signature that's easily detectable, let's imagine. And all of a sudden, a hockey stick of UFO activity goes up, right? Observation, surveillance, close approach, and then an incursion into our world. And after that incursion, which is into our seas, into territorial, nationally governed air, land, and sea space, over nuclear and sensitive military sites, we begin to see other activities take place of a more alarming nature. Well, having a good experience is not good enough to assess the nature of what just happened, right? Just because someone felt good doesn't mean it was good. But in one case, during a crash recovery, US military personnel were recovering the vehicle, and another craft approached them and actually launched some kind of offensive action kinetically and killed multiple US military personnel in the process. I don't think NHI would want disclosure. I think they want to continue this more subtle, super long game engagement with humanity, um, affect us in the ways that they can on their timeline, and not activate like a hornet's nest our human response. Trump wants to be the disclosure president. Those UAP hearings brought forward some powerful assertions on a multi decade secretive arms race over NHI tech. So, if I was the NHI and I want to impress upon the Trump administration, don't disclose, I would throw up some catastrophic disclosure threats up in the air over American cities and dangle that little carrot and stick over the administration and say, we can blow this open at any time and you can't handle it. They're not just shooting a dart at us, checking our vitals, and then putting us back in the wild. There's a lot more that's taking place. There's a deep emotional connection being established. And this is my concern, is that in some of these interactions, there's a takedown of the person. There's kind of a stripping down of them, and they're stark and naked on craft or psychologically. We hybridize plants, animals, food products. We genetically modify them. We do direct genetic interventions into them to prefer certain traits over others or to swap traits, right? So who's to say a non-human, highly technological set of forces couldn't do the same to us? I mean, it's evident to me that whatever is doing this doesn't want us to know it's doing it. And so it's going to change its behavior when it feels like it's at risk of being detected. Why would someone saying an entity of unknown type entered my home and performed these experiments on me, took me outside my home, returned me back? I have puncture wounds on my body. I have bruises. I have a foreign object in my body. My whole neurological profile is different. My blood tests are anomalous. Why would we throw that out? Would I go out into a field and vector in a craft and let it play with me, download information to my mind, presumably bidirectional, take information out? I wouldn't at this point. Why would I do that? What am I playing with? And society is not going to help you with this at this point. You have to help yourself. the public is actually eager to walk in. I call it the UFO conversation. I have it at checkout lanes, at the hospital with the doctor, the nurse. I have it all the time. Expand your frame, expand out of this moment of disclosure, look at the whole species interaction, think internationally, and get creative. We're banging our heads on the iron gates of the Pentagon. So you have way more agency than you think. If 1,000 citizens got highly involved, if 30 PhDs got highly involved, if citizen research groups formed and got into the field and figured out what's going on, wow, we could move the needle considerably. I see this as international, whole world, a part of a long game process of us coming to terms with this presence and responding to it. Um, Fight the good fight, right? Citizens engaged in efforts to track and detect UAP, citizens engaged in decoding the intent of the phenomenon. To me, those are key lines of effort, and everyone is invited.